Fettis. She's going to be speaking on business growth. Megan is an international best-selling author, international speaker, facilitator, and mostly importantly, passionate mother of 2 young boys. Through the influential speakers formula, her clients achieve consistent sales through speaking engagements to build thriving communities and increase their impact. So welcome to the stage, Miss Megan.
I have 2 boys, and they're wild, little bit feral. We live on an acreage, so they have full reign to run wild and crazy. But most importantly, those boys are wise. They're curious, and they ask the best questions I've ever had asked. I was driving with my youngest about 2 years ago, and out of nowhere, he asks, "Mom, how do we speak?" So of course, I don't know, how many here have kids? Just raise your hands. How many of you have been asked a question where you're like, oh gosh, what do I say now? So my wheels start spinning and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go very anatomical. I'm going to talk about how we have vocal cords. They vibrate, but how do I describe this to a 5-year-old? I look back into the car and he's smiling and he goes, "Mom, I got it." Says we breathe life force into our breath box. And our breath box, our lungs, right beside our heart. And that's where God resides within each of us. So every single time we speak, we are speaking our essence of God. And it made me think, our words, our message is what people need to hear. Now, you all raised your hands, entrepreneurs. Beautiful. How many of you are utilizing speaking to grow your business? Okay, not as many hands as I would like to see. Because here's the thing, your voice is what your audience needs to hear to say yes to you. But most importantly, it's also what they need to say yes to themselves. Speaking has always been the greatest catalyst of change. We think about leaders in the world that have created movements, that have changed the dynamics of cultures, that have changed the dynamics of history. It's been through speech. Speech is what creates movement. Now, speaking is one of those things that no matter what, whether you believe it or not, it is still a very highly sought after skill. How many of you have seen a speaker before and you're like, wow, that person I need to connect with? How many of you have done that before? Right? Every single person I've ever worked with in my business that I've hired has been a speaker. Because the reality is, when we speak, we increase our level of authority and credibility. Okay? It allows you to stand out as the visionary in your industry. Somebody who can create change. Somebody who can create movement and get the level of results that people are looking for. Powerful, right? The challenge is, what I often see is that most speakers, entrepreneurs, they think about getting onto more stages, getting in front of more audience. They think about doing more, leading themselves or positioning themselves with industry giants. But that ends up overwhelming them, burning them out, and more often than not getting them the results that they're looking for. And that's because the real problem is not that they're not visible enough. It's that they lack a system and structure within their talk. When I first started speaking, I was 9 years old. It was at a 4-H public speaking competition. How many of you know what 4-H is? Oh my gosh, I was thinking I was going to have to explain about showing a cow and walking it around in a circle. But part of 4-H is the public speaking. I was 9 years old and I was so excited that I was getting up to speak on stage. And I picked the most incredible topic that was going to rivet the audience. It was all about my blankie named Shreddies. And I worked on that talk, practiced for weeks. I was preparing. I got up on that stage, shared my talk, and I was in awe. I had people laughing, I had people crying, and by the end of that talk, that was the first time I was told I was speaking into my business to facilitate growth and to be able to serve at that higher level. I thought that was enough. I thought I'd be able to bump out onto those stages and be a good speaker. And time again, at different events, I have people come up to me and say, wow, that was amazing. Wow, your talk moved me. And then they'd leave. Not one single sale, not one opportunity to create transformation for people in their lives. What ended up happening is speaking was killing my business. It was costing me money. So I got invited to finally speak at this huge event in Las Vegas. I'm talking big. I was sharing the stage with Les Brown. I was sharing the stage with Brian Smith, who's the founder of UGG Boots. So here I am, I'm like, I've made it. Little did anybody know I had money to get there. And I was putting all of my eggs in that one basket thinking, this is it. I've gotten myself to this point where I'm positioning myself with the right people. I'm going to make it. I get up onto that stage, and I'm standing in front of a crowd of over 2,000 people. I take a deep breath in, and a deep breath out, and I deliver the perfect talk. And I look out into the audience. People are standing, they're crying, they're clapping, and I look over to my booth and there's a lineup of people. And I'm like, yes, this is it, I've made it. I go over there, I get hugs, I get told these incredible stories, and then one by one, they leave. And I am devastated. I go and sit down in the audience, and one of the fellow speakers is sitting there, and he looks at me and he says, okay, well, how much did you make? How much did you convert? And I said, nothing. And he looked at me and said, well, then, if you're not making any money speaking, why are you doing it? I did everything I could to make sure I held my tears back. And I stood up, and I ran out of that conference hall, got as quickly as I could up to my room, and as soon as I pressed on that heavy brown hotel door, the waterfall of tears began. Because all I felt was that I was a failure. I'm a fraud. Like, what am I doing? Why do I keep doing this? And just as I'm about to tuck myself in and pull out the full-out pity party, I get a call from the event host. And he says, Megan, it's the VIP dinner, and I need you down here. So I quickly make myself look presentable. And I go downstairs, and he pulls me aside. He says, Megan, I don't often invite speakers back to my events, but there's something about you that I want to have back next year. But you need to learn certain skills to be able to truly own the stage in the way that you're supposed to. So I did. I went home, I hired a coach, and I learned the actual structures that are needed to have in a talk so that I could connect to an audience, so that I could create the level of clarity that people need, and create insight and inspiration that inspired that level of movement. So I'm going to share with you all 3 of the most common mistakes that speakers and entrepreneurs make. And I say that interchangeably because once you figure out a pattern in one area, you can usually integrate it into another area of business. Okay? So first mistake that most speakers make that hold them back from making sales, or entrepreneurs that hold them back from making sales, is you're focused on what you're going to get. Okay? How many of you have seen a speaker and right away you're like, ooh, I don't know. This feels a little off. Have any of you had that experience? Yes. Okay? That's usually because a lot of speakers and a lot of entrepreneurs, we show up thinking, what can I get from this person? How can I get that first sale? Or how can I get that next sale? As a speaker, it's not about what you can get. It is your job to be able to inspire your audience enough to give them enough value that they are completely enriched by your talk. As an entrepreneur, it's not about chasing people. It's about attracting them. And if you can deliver that caliber of content, that you know where they are, what they need to hear, and why they need to hear it, and you speak so specifically to that and giving it your all, you will inspire them to say yes to themselves. And I say that a lot because it's not about inspiring them to say yes to you. It's about inspiring them to say yes to themselves. Second piece is that the story is too surface. Okay? I'm going to say this, and I want you all to write this down, that the more personal the story, the more universal. Want to know the most beautiful thing about being human? We all have gone through challenging times. We've all gone through beautiful times. There is not one single person that is without the true privilege of experiencing the highs and the lows of life. The more you share of yourself, the more your audience can connect to themselves. The more it gives them permission to truly look at where they are, what they need, and how they can move forward. The third piece is that the content is not designed to help your audience make a decision. Okay? And I'm going to say this very clearly because, again, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, we are here to help people make a decision. Whether that's a yes or a no, we still want them to have that clear decision. Okay? I often say there's 2 trigger points you want to hit with your content. This is across the board, 2 trigger points. One is that trigger point where somebody is listening to you and they're like, wow, she gets me. Or wow, he really understands this. The second trigger point is that you want to hit to make sure that your content is working is, I definitely do not like them. Okay? Now that sounds intuitive because often we think as an entrepreneur we need to be likable. We need to appear as the influencer. But we need, as the influencer, to positively influence people to make the decision of, yes, I need to work with them, or heck no, I don't. Okay? So, in closing, I want you all to think about how is your content creating the movement that you desire? Is it speaking to the inspiration that somebody needs to hear to take that next step to transform their lives? Thanks, everybody. All right. So I'll open it up to questions. Any questions that you guys have, I am happy to answer. I love that question. So something that is a really important thing is when we have structure, a lot of people think, oh, well, my talk has to be this every single time, right? But structure actually creates room for fluidity. It creates space for intuitive creation in the moment. And so as a speaker, it's really important to know who is your audience. What are their primary needs, right? It's not going to completely shift all of your content, shift points. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that because definitely, I saw your hand, I'll come to there. As a speaker, if you get hired to speak on the stage or you get brought in to booked to speak on a stage, ask the event host as much questions as you can. Okay? We often think as speakers, okay, well, this is my job. I'm going to show up and I'm going to deliver this value. But do your research. Get to know the people so that you can really serve. Yeah. Yes. Great question. Great question. So I'm a big believer. This is something that my grandmother taught me. Beautiful woman. I'm so blessed that I got to grow up with her wisdom. And one of her biggest lessons was you can be guided. Always. And so that's kind of how I've navigated my life in a lot of ways, is I listen for the specific things that come up. And so as bad in that moment as I was feeling, that words that I had to hear from the event host was the exact thing I needed to catalyze the change. Because I had the opportunity to make two decisions. Give it all up or to keep going and figure it out. And so because of what the event host had said, that was the inspiration I needed to say, you know what? Let's give it another go. I just need to learn the right skills. And so that was that moment. And what's neat about it is because all of that allowed me to understand that there's so many speakers that are experiencing the same thing. That we go out not knowing that there needs to be a structure to our talk, not knowing how to truly deliver it in a way that connects to our audience, and how to actually market ourselves so that we're in front of the right audience. So that would be what I would say is just having that guidance from my grandmother, as weird as that might sound. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Any other questions? All right. So before I leave here, I just wanted to offer you all the opportunity to join my webinar. So it's a full-length talk. It's a 60-minute time where we come in to talk about how to sell with soul from the stage. Okay? So if you're interested, this is where we get into like the exact tools that you need to be able to structure your talk, to be able to deliver it, so that your